the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, August 6th. I know this is kind of early for you guys, so I realize we're a little, outside of our normal schedule. We'll see how this goes, and we'll see whether it is doable to do it this early. Otherwise, I'm going to have to shift schedules and do it much later at night, which we can do. We'll have to figure it out. All right. Thank you all for joining me. We can jump right in with our first story of the day, and this is kind of a really positive story, and it really is an interesting story. This is coming from an article in the New York Times, and it's great because you could tell a little bit of a sense of panic or a sense of worry in the article itself, in a sense of not knowing how to deal with this exactly. Here's the title of the article: Public schools try to sell themselves as more students use vouchers. The subheading is a decline in the number of children and rise in the number of choices has created a crisis for public schools. Some are trying new strategies to recruit students. So here's what's going on. Over the last few years, a whole series of states around the country have adopted a variety of different programs, school choice type programs. Programs that grant parents money that would have been spent, money, for most of them, this is their own money they've paid in taxes. Money that would have been spent on the public school is now given to parents, and they have a choice. And again, depending on the program, some of these programs are better, some of these programs are not so good. But generally, parents now have a choice to use that money for a private school, and in some cases, even for homeschooling. And parents are taking advantage of the choice. Parents are pulling their kids out of public schools and putting them into private schools, and indeed homeschooling has taken off since COVID. And part of this is parents discovered during COVID how poor the education their kids were getting, and that really disturbed them. But most of them can't afford to pay for education twice, once in the form of taxes, and then again, for a private school. But what these school choice options provide them is an opportunity to get, in a sense, their tax money back and be able to use that money in order to fund a private school education. Poor parents who don't pay taxes, the government is spending money on their kids anyway when they fund the public schools to which those kids go to. Now these poor parents are getting the money that would have been spent on their kids' education in a public school, and giving them the money, and giving them the choice as to where to send their kid. They can still send them to the same public school, and indeed it's still true that the majority of parents do that. Or they can pull them out and send them to private school again, and in some cases, in Arizona, for example, they can even homeschool them. Now, you can criticize this whole approach as, wait a minute, we don't want government funding education at all. And that is true. Ultimately, we don't want government funding education at all. But how do you get there? You can't just tomorrow abolish public education and encourage private schools to rise and figure out, and let the market figure out how to pay for poor kids' education. It doesn't work that way, and you'd be doing a lot of damage to a lot of people. The reality is that, like most movements towards freedom, it has to be done in some kind of gradual manner, in some kind of manner that that makes sense, that is that takes into account the level of taxation that exists in our society today, the number of jobs that exist in our society today, the level of wealth that exists today, and the attitudes and mentality of people. Just like I don't believe there should be Social Security, but I don't advocate for abolishing Social Security tomorrow. Just like I don't think there should be Medicare and Medicaid, I don't believe you can abolish them tomorrow. I don't think you can abolish public education tomorrow. Well, let me rephrase it. I think you can abolish public education tomorrow, but you have to provide a means by which parents can fund the education for the kids in the interim. As you transition towards a free market where people are expected to take care of themselves, where people earn more money because there are more opportunities, where people are taxed dramatically less. So I'm all for a school choice. Particularly, I like education saving accounts because education saving accounts do not, at least for example, the ones in Arizona, do not dictate which type of school you have to send your kid to. They don't get involved in approving the schools that the money goes to. The parent gets to decide that. And again, one of the options is homeschooling. And then, in a well-designed education saving account, the money is in your account. It rolls over from year to year. As long as you spend it on educational stuff, you can use the money in that account. And then if there's any money left after 12 years, you can use it for college. Or take it out and I guess pay taxes on it. I think that's the way it's designed. Well, it's redistribution of wealth for some people. For many people, it's just a return of their tax money. The redistribution of wealth is happening anyway. I'd rather make the redistribution of wealth more efficient and more effective until we get to the point where we can philosophically, politically, and economically eliminate all redistributions of wealth. It's a step towards achieving that goal, and it's a step that will also educate the public. It's a step that educate people about the availability of private schools, the costs of private schools, the availability of homeschooling, and all the other educational options, online schools, AI tutors. And if they can get their tax money back, or get a subsidy from the government, a redistribution of wealth from the government, in order to learn that, then when those subsidies are taken away and when taxes are cut dramatically, people will be used to taking responsibility for their own kids' education. And it won't be traumatic, it'll be a relatively easy transition. What we need to get rid of as urgent, right? I mean, look, I think this is important to keep note. The top priority is to provide kids with good education. And we know that the way to do that is to create a competitive market. That competition will provide a good product in education. And if we can get competition going, if we can get a good product out there, millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of kids will be better educated. That is already a huge plus. If that competition can basically eviscerate, eliminate, end public education, that is government education, that is government-run curriculum, if that competition will destroy the teachers' unions, that would be amazing. And if that means we have to tolerate redistribution of wealth for longer, I mean, it's not going away anyway, then so be it. I think the priority of eliminating and destroying the teachers' unions, of decimating public education, again, government schools, is the number one priority. If we can shift all the kids into homeschooling or private schools and basically, eliminate the government schooling sector, then all that's left really at that point is to have a debate about who should fund your kids' education. Everybody will know private schools work. Everybody will know the cost of private schools. Everybody will be able to estimate how difficult or not so difficult it would be for them if the taxes are cut to also be able to fund their kids' education. So it is a huge step in the direction of shrinking the role of government in our lives, getting the government out of the way. Now, I know the fear. There is a fear that because that vouchers and some of these school choice programs actually put private schools under the thumb of government. Some schools will not be approved for vouchers, and other schools will be approved for vouchers, and that's a form of economic fascism, and that's very dangerous because it turns the private schools into now, under control of government. And I agree with that. So I am pushing for school choice to be focused on education saving accounts that do not actually do not dictate which schools the kids could go to. So to the extent that programs are bad for private schools because they put them under the thumb of government, yeah, let's change those programs and make them better. Let's try to model the Nevada, I don't even know if the Nevada program actually ultimately passed, but I think the Arizona program is probably the best. Let's try to model that program and try to get it in place. I mean, look, one of the things about this New York Times story is that there is real panic in the public school sector, and that's good news. They're seeing a significant shrinkage in application. A part of that is lower birth rates, fewer children, and therefore less school children. But a big chunk of it, and they know it, is kids choosing not to come to government schools, but to go to private schools or to be homeschooled. And they can't stand the competitive pressure because they know they're losing. School districts having to close significant numbers of schools over the last 5 years because of this. And now this is great news. This should be celebrated. Now, we don't have an ideal yet. The ideal is 100% private education, all funded completely privately. That's the ideal. But it's going to take several steps to get there. You're not going to eliminate it all at once. And I think education saving accounts is one step towards that. I think the Trump administration now has tax credits for education. I haven't seen the details of that program, but that's another option. Ayn Rand supported the option of tax credits for education. So you can deduct the cost of education from your taxes. That's great. Again, gives you more money to be able to make choices around your own kids' education. And it's just a matter of getting back the taxes that you paid for education to begin with. In Florida, 71% of children now attend district schools, but that's down from over 90. And Florida is one of the few states in the country where the number of school-aged children is increasing, is growing. So again, I think this is fantastic news. In Arizona, I think the numbers are even bigger because the voucher program, or it's not the voucher, but the education saving accounts program is even more robust in Arizona than in Florida, and Florida is pretty robust. I mean, what you're seeing in K through 12 education in Arizona is real competition. What's happening is that public schools are now hiring consultants, marketing consultants, to figure out how to attract more students to their schools. Now again, this is good news. This creates competition. Even the government schools are going to become better because of this. Now, I don't want the government schools to become better. I just want them to go away. But since there is no political, zero political motivation to try to make the schools, the government schools go away. There's nobody out there advocating for complete privatization and elimination. I'll take what I can get, and if 25% of kids can get to private schools who couldn't get to private schools before. Cool. That's 25 kids who are getting a better education than they did before. If government schools get marginally better because of competition, that's good. Kids are going to get a better education. So, we're also seeing charter schools arise. I'm not a big fan of charter schools because, again, they're paid by taxpayers, but charter schools face competitive pressures and as a consequence are just better than government schools. I want kids to get a better education. The best could be complete privatization. But again, that's not happening anytime soon. So let's take it one step at a time. Let's move in the right direction and let's kill off as many government schools as we can in the process. In the meantime, government schools are shutting down. Government budgets, every time the government pays a family, puts money in their education saving account, it takes that money out of the budget of a government school. That means government schools' budget is shrinking. That means teacher unions are getting less powerful. And again, that is all basically good news. So, I think it should be celebrated, and we need to hope that over time, what we will see is that government schools become the minority of schools, the smallest of schools. Now, it's true that almost all these initiatives are in red states. Arizona was the first. Arizona's kind of is it a red state? Is it a blue state? It's somewhere in between. Nevada, again, red, blue, somewhere in between. But a lot of red states, Florida and others, Texas has one of the weaker programs and was very, very difficult to get a school choice program passed in Texas because it turns out that Republican state representatives from rural communities in Texas, super conservative, opposed school choice because they wanted to save their local public schools because their public schools were the bedrock of their communities, and tradition demanded that their rural communities have public schools, government schools. So they did not want the competition, and they did not want vouchers. It was very difficult to pass it in Texas because Republicans opposed it. But the reality is that mostly this is a Republican program, but not exclusively. There are inner cities around the country which have adopted voucher programs because minority parents demanded so, and Democratic mayors and Democratic city councils succumbed to that and allowed it to happen. I think that pitched right, there's absolutely no reason you couldn't get Democrats to align around this, again, particularly parents in minority communities. So this does not have to be a Democratic-Republican issue. I think pitched right, over time it won't be, because what worries me is the direction the Republican Party is heading is away from choice in everything, and much more towards a J.D. Vance world, which is a world where curriculum is dictated from the top. And you don't want private schools. You don't want people making choices. You don't want people being taught stuff that the authorities don't approve of. You want to make sure that everybody gets the appropriate patriotic and ethical and Christian education that they should be required to get. So the right is moving away from choice. And that worries me because the majority in these states, the right that is leaving needs to be replaced by somebody. And I think certain parts of the Democratic Party could be attracted to school choice. Again, particularly those who are concerned about poor kids and poor families and rich people having choices and poor families not having choices, which I think is an appropriate pitch, and I think a right pitch. I think it's an injustice. We will see. Again, as we said, a lot of government schools shutting down, a lot of kids moving out, and parents having a lot more choices, that is all a good thing. It's not a perfect thing. It's far from perfect, but it's a move in the right direction. And to get to perfect, we're going to have to move in the right direction systematically, steadily, for a pretty long time to get to where we want to be. It's going to take steps. You're not going to get it all at once unless we have a revolution. And if we had a revolution right now, I hate to break it to you, but we would lose. We would lose. All right. Let's see. All right. One of the things that, you know, the Trump administration is doing, I think one of the more damaging things the Trump administration is doing, is being their attacks on international students, wrapped up in the whole attacks on immigration, legal and illegal. The message the Trump administration is sending out there, pretty clearly, I think, being received by people all over the world, is America doesn't want you. It doesn't want you. Even if you're smart, even if you're productive, even if you're able, we don't want you. If you're enrolling in American universities, we don't really want you. I mean, there's an attitude on the right that says you're taking out a slot of an American, go back home. We don't need you and we don't want you. We saw that attitude as reflected in the demands that the Trump administration made to Harvard, and we're just seeing it in the general attitude towards immigrants that exists in the country, and in a message sent of inhospitality, that we are not hospitable, right? Not hospitable. Trump and Republicans are sending international students elsewhere, which is potentially tragic for the U.S. In a number of different respects. Certainly, it's tragic because a lot of talent that used to come to the U.S., and many of them stayed, built businesses, created businesses, went to work for businesses, brought their brains, brought their skills, brought their minds to this country, and we all benefited as a result of that. And now, not going to come to this country. They're going to find alternatives. Many of the Chinese students will stay in China or go to universities in Europe, and they will skip over American universities. And even though American universities are supposedly the best, with the Trump administration cutting science funding and cutting funding for so many of these universities, and with them discouraging coming as international students, what you're going to see is students just not coming here, even if the universities here are the best, if their budgets are being cut, and they're treated, badly for being foreigners. They're just going to stay home or go somewhere else, and that is a massive loss of brain power for this country. I mean, gone are the days where people, even Republicans, used to suggest stamping a green card to every STEM graduate who graduated from an American university. That's gone. That attitude is gone. Nobody's interested in them. MAGA wants them all gone home. They would love to see international student-free universities. That's the price of having MAGA in control. In addition, the reality is that most of our universities get a big chunk of their revenue from international students. International students are the only students, really, who pay full tuition. By paying full tuition, they are to a large extent subsidizing the in-state tuition or the much lower or the scholarship tuition that so many other students are getting. Some of that is subsidized by the government, by the federal government, and some of that is subsidized by the university itself through the fact that they can charge foreign students, if you will, above market rates, so that American students can get below market rates. If foreign students are no longer enrolled in American universities, let me tell you, some universities are going out of business. Some universities will not exist. I know universities where a majority of the students are foreign students, and that's what keeps them alive, and that's what keeps them growing, and that's where the revenue is coming from. Other universities will have to shrink, they'll have to raise tuition on American students. It is going to suck resources, more resources out of our university system. And while I'm happy if that happens in certain departments and certain parts of the university, I do not believe that that is always the case. There's a lot of incredibly valuable research, most of innovation, to some extent, particularly in biology, but in biotech. But even in tech, a lot of innovation starts at universities. A lot of the research that started the AI revolution was at universities. The research that created the internet started at universities. The research that, the first internet browser that became Netscape ultimately was originally Mosaic, started at a university. So much. I mean, think about even Google and Yahoo, which started as graduate programs at a university with foreign students, by the way. So much innovation comes out of our universities. Killing our universities and killing the budgets of our universities is not a good idea, and killing and destroying. I love that Anne knows how many schools there should be. Maybe she should join the Trump administration's Central Planning Bureau, where she can decide how many universities there should be and dictate that, and maybe figure out which ones should exist and which ones shouldn't, and what they should teach and how they should be run. God forbid we actually have a competitive market where the number of universities is determined by the number of students willing to pay tuition to that university. We wouldn't want that. And if they can attract international students, why would it be okay to shut them down because that you decide there are too many universities? God, the number of people who think that they are supporters of objectivism and who have an inclination towards central planning is truly stunning. Truly stunning. They get subsidized, yeah, and therefore but here I'm saying they're not subsidized. Here I'm saying they exist because of the tuition paid by foreign students. These are the universities that are less subsidized. The more foreign students they have at a university, the less subsidized they are. The less the government has to subsidize them because they're getting it from foreign students. And most of the subsidy is through student loans, which students have to pay back. Or some of them do, anyway. It's not that simple. I mean, get rid of student loans. I'm all for that, and let's see how the market shakes out. But don't deny student visas to students coming to the United States to study who are willing to pay out-of-pocket cash for their tuition, not subsidized by anybody. Why? Because you don't like foreigners? Oh, no, it's not that. It's not that. It's not that. It's that we can't really criticize the Trump administration. That's what it's really about. It's me criticizing Trump that's no good. It's me going after saying something negative about Republicans. That's what's offensive. If Republicans decide foreign students are out, then we should not disagree with them because, hey, they're better than Democrats. So we shouldn't criticize Republicans because they're better than Democrats. So don't criticize them. Join the tribe. Join the mindless tribe. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, this stuff about economic data is kind of funny. Trump doesn't like the data, so he fires the guy in charge of the data. Government data is messy and distortive to goodness, and doesn't like academia. And yet, so much of the innovation that you benefit from, including being here online on the internet, and came from academia. So much of the life extension drugs that you one day will receive to extend your life, the treatment you might get to cure your cancer, come from academia. It starts out as basic research in academia. Would YouTube exist without academia, research in academia? So you can not like academia, but again, that's kind of a silly generalized statement. But the amount of benefits that you actually derive from academia, if for a moment you give up kind of the conventional attitude, right? Yeah, universities, the universities are the biggest threat. The solution is not to shut them down. The solution is not to starve them. The solution to universities being the bigger threat is to challenge them intellectually. It's to challenge them philosophically. Certainly for the government to stop subsidizing them, but to challenge them philosophically. But not in a kind of way that destroys the good in universities. So universities are the biggest threat in the humanities and in philosophy and in English departments, and a massive benefit to all of us in STEM. And even though STEM is slowly being corrupted by all these other things, it's still, what alternative do we have? What alternative institutions do we have? So you want to die quickly? Yeah, let's kill academia. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if we just shut down all the things I don't like quickly like that, that's, then we would have we would all be a lot poorer. You got to think about these things. Think about them. And to just denounce academia per se, all of it, shut it all down, scrape it all, is just stupid. This is what the Trump administration is doing. It's just stupid and it's dumb. It's not the right approach. Yes, government should not be giving, loans to students. It's something that Obama basically nationalized. Government should not be funding science. The science should be funded privately. But there's a way to stop doing it, and there's a way not to do it. And as you grow every aspect of government, as you 10x the amount of money you're giving to ICE, 10x the amount of money you're giving to Homeland Security, at the same time you're cutting science funding? How does that make any sense? If we believe in cutting government spending, shouldn't we start with not raising more money for a rights oppressing organization like ICE? And maybe leave the science funding as the last thing we cut? Just thinking. Just saying, maybe. All right. Let's see. All right, I was talking about statistics, yeah. So Trump doesn't like the statistics, so he fires the guy. But the thing is about government statistics is they're all messy. They're all noisy. They constantly are being revised because it's a lot of it's approximation. It's as good as we can get. And yet, we have a gazillion of these stats coming in. The government is providing them. As long as the government provides it, there's a constant fear of them being manipulated, a constant fear of conspiracy theories. And this is kind of the Trump thing. Oh, he's biased. I want my people to produce the numbers. And I think what Trump's doing is he's basically legitimizing the idea that the numbers are not objective, that the numbers are purely government creations and political creations, and they're done to manipulate. So all he's doing is fueling the conspiracy theories and encouraging them. It reminded me of the fact that in Hong Kong, Hong Kong after World War II, the British government, as it turned socialist, almost by accident appointed as the governor of Hong Kong basically a classical liberal, a laissez-faire capitalism guy. And his name was Sir John Copperthwaite, something like that, Copperthwaite. Anyway, Sir John Copperthwaite actually abolished the collection of government statistics in the 1960s. He said collecting government statistics were dangerous because having those statistics enabled social engineering of all stripes, and they enabled or justified state intervention in the economy. So he just stopped producing them. And indeed, years and years later, I mean, this is the guy who basically governed Hong Kong from the end of World War II until, I think, the 1980s. I mean, he had seen one of the greatest economic booms in all of history. I mean, he governed over a territory that boomed, became richer than the motherland. The mothership became significantly, on a per capita basis, became richer than England. It started out really, really, really poor. So, here's a guy who achieved great things, and he was asked to name the one reform that he was most proud of, and he named it as, "I abolished the collection of statistics." I think that's great. I love that story. I wish government didn't collect statistics because I wish government didn't try to micromanage the economy. Unfortunately, my wishes are unlikely to come true. But there you have it. In Hong Kong, for decades, they did not have statistics they didn't have a department, they didn't have stats, they didn't know. And they left the economy alone. They didn't try to micromanage it. Didn't try to do social engineering. Daniel says my volume is very low. Do you guys agree with Daniel? Anybody else think the volume is very low? Because it's normal. It's the same as last year. I'm not yelling as I usually do. I'm in an office setting here with thinner walls than I have at home. Yeah, let me know in the chat if you think the volume is very low. I can raise it, but I don't want to raise it if it's just Daniel. And I have no problem raising it if it's a general problem that you guys also have. So, waiting to see what you say in the chat. All right, let's see. Let's talk a little bit about Russia. Pretty low, Brian Cross says, lower than usual. All right, let me raise it a little bit and see. All right, is that better? That should be better. That's I just raised the volume there. Let's see, where else can I raise it? There's one other place I think I can raise it. Let's see. Sound. Input. How about that? Is that significantly different? Is that a higher volume? Is that too loud? Maybe it's too loud. Why don't we just max that out, and why don't we reduce this a little bit? All right, let me know if that is better or if that is too much or what that is. What do you think this volume is like? I'll try to keep it at this level if this is the level you guys like. Jason says louder. You want me to make it louder, or it is already louder? All right. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let me know. The chat is yours. All right. Reminder for you guys to ask questions in the super chat. Don't forget to ask questions in the super chat. Let's see. What do we do with this? No, what did I want to do? Didn't want to do that. All right, we'll figure it out afterwards. All right, it's fine now. It got loud, but now I don't have to have all my volume controls on max. Just started me. It's good now. I guess I can alter my own. All right, this porridge was. There we go. All right, so Russia. So a number of things going on with Russia that I think are interesting. So first, Putin is meeting today with Witkoff. Trump's, I think, latest ultimatum towards Russia is about to expire. So Russia coming to the table and joining negotiations around peace or ceasefire, are supposed to, the ultimatum is supposed to be up, and Witkoff is meeting with Putin today, and trying to get Putin to the negotiating table. But the reality is that Putin has no interest in negotiating right now. He has no interest in joining the table. He thinks that Trump's tariffs and Trump's attempts to restrict the ability of Russia to sell oil in global markets is futile. He is convinced that he is going to be successful. Indeed, Trump has been putting pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil, but India is basically saying, yeah, we're not going to listen to Trump about these things. We're going to do our own thing. China, of course, buys a huge amount of Russian oil, and Trump is trying to put pressure on China to stop that, but the Chinese, again, are telling Trump that they're not interested, that this is a huge sticking point in the negotiations around tariffs between the United States and China. And on top of that, the reality is that Putin's demands have not changed around the war. Putin demands 4 provinces. He wants Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, all those 3 provinces, to be part of Russia. And he will not engage in a peace unless that happens. Putin believes Russia's winning, and he doubts the U.S. sanctions will have any significant impact on Russia. And he doubts that Trump is willing to provide Ukrainians with enough arms to make a difference. Trump has basically been very, very weak on Ukraine, has coddled Putin, has given him every reason to believe that sanctions will not be effective, has given Putin every reason to believe that Trump will not go full in on Ukraine and support Ukraine. And as a consequence, Putin is saying, yeah, I'm not going to, I have no interest in stopping this. I can keep going. Indeed, I think Putin today views the war as necessary for his survival. I don't think he can afford to stop this war. I don't think he can afford to stop the war without actually declaring victory. And to declare victory, he's stated those 4 provinces, at the very least, those 4 have to be a part of Russia. Now, Russia's making slow progress on the battlefield. It is moving the lines slowly. There's been no major summer campaign that has achieved any significant victories. And the victories are all costing Russia massive numbers of casualties in both men and equipment. But Ukraine's not gaining anywhere either. That is, Russia's grinding away inch by inch and gaining Ukrainian territory. Slowly, but I guess surely. At this rate, it'll take them years to occupy the territories that Putin demands be part of Russia. But Putin seems to be in no hurry, and I think he is counting on the West's impatience and ultimate weakness, and the fact that they will ultimately give in and collapse and not support Ukraine. And I think he's counting on Ukraine's internal politics to implode, and ultimately for Ukraine not to be able to sustain itself in a state of war. This is why he's pounding the civilian areas of Ukraine. This is why he's nonstop, sending missiles and drones into Kiev and into other cities in order to try to grind away at the willingness of the Ukrainians to stand up and fight, And so he goes after the civilian population. But he definitely still hopes and doesn't see any option but to try to win this war. So Putin views himself in a strength position. I don't think he has much respect for Trump. I think he thinks that Trump is not very smart. I think he's right. I think he thinks he can play Trump. He's done it over and over again over the last 9 years. And the reality is, politically, Putin cannot afford to end the war. He cannot afford not to win, and therefore he won't allow it. He won't stop. and Trump can threaten, Trump can send all the negotiators he wants. It's not going to have an impact. One of the kind of funny parts about all this and about what Trump is doing is like Trump is putting a lot of pressure on like China and India because they're importing oil from Russia, and he wants them to stop. And so, earlier, I think it was today, Trump was asked, well, what about all the stuff the United States imports from Russia? Could you give us an update, he was asked, about U.S. importing uranium and fertilizer from Russia in spite of all the sanctions? And Trump said, I don't know anything about that. I have to check it out. And this is what's funny about it, right? I mean, Trump is putting pressure on all these other countries, but the reality is that the Trump administration and the Biden administration have continued to buy stuff from Russia nonstop since the war started. Indeed, right now, the United States imports billions of dollars worth of Russian energy and commodities, primarily enriched uranium. Since January 2022, the United States has imported $24.51 billion of Russian goods. In 2024 alone, Washington imported fertilizer worth $1.27 billion, uranium and plutonium worth $624 million, and palladium worth around $878 million from Moscow. So, it's kind of a little bit hypocritical for the United States to basically say to India or to China or to any other countries, you can't import stuff from Russia when the United States is doing it. And again, this is the Biden administration, Trump administration, they all did it. It's also a reality that so far, Trump has done very little. We've got tariffs on Canada, we've got tariffs on Mexico, we've got tariffs on countries all over the world. Many of them are allies, the EU. And yet we have no tariffs on Russia yet. So our enemies, cool. Enemies, no problem. It's our friends who we want to harm. We want to do damage to. It's so incoherent. Then finally, I want to show you this graph. It's really cool, but everything you need to know about the suicidal nature of the European Union is in this graph. Look at this graph. This is a graph of natural gas production, Russia versus Europe, 1990 to 2020, right? Natural gas production, 1990 to 2020. And you can see that there was a period in which the European Union actually produced more gas than they imported from Russia. This is actually Russian Federation export, so this is exporting not just to Europe, right? And you can see that Europe used to produce more natural gas itself than Russia did, or that Russia exported. And yet, today, Europe produces almost no natural gas. So they peaked in around 2000, and since then it's just gone down. And what's the cause of that? Did Europe run out of natural gas supplies? No. There's plenty of natural gas in Germany, in Poland, in other parts of Northern Europe, in Ukraine, but Ukraine is not part of the EU. In Britain, Great Britain, huge natural gas reserves. You'd need to use fracking to get them, but they're there. No, what has happened is the European Union, in the name of environmentalism, in the name of protecting the environment, in the name of climate change, has stopped producing, has stopped drilling for natural gas. And in the name of, fracking causes, earthquakes or something, they have stopped fracking. For the same reasons they stopped, similar reasons to them stop producing nuclear energy, European Union has stopped producing natural gas. And so their dependency on Russia, or their dependency generally on importing natural gas, is not a consequence of the fact that they don't have any locally. They have it locally. It's 100% consequence of their green policies, 100% consequence of their crazy environmentalist policies. And you know, this is what's killing Europe. The lack of productivity, high energy costs, high electricity costs, massive regulations, many of them in the name of environmentalism, others in the name of just regulating, in the name of controlling, in the name of, you know, rejecting freedom. The European Union sees no innovation, very little tech innovation, very little biotech innovation. And the consequence of that is Europe is fading. It's fading in its economically, it's fading demographically, it's fading in every respect. You know, maybe militarily we'll see a rebirth of Europe with their now commitment to building up their military, but you know, I'll believe it when I see it. All right, this was a funny story. You know the Jones Act. I think I've told you many times about the Jones Act. The Jones Act basically says, it was passed in 1920, and a consequence of World War I, when the U.S. enlisted the merchant marines, that is the civilian ships, American civilian ships, to transport troops and materials from the United States to Europe during the war. In 1920, they wanted to guarantee that they would always have a merchant marine industry so that they could transport troops to wherever they needed in the world in case of an emergency. This was in 1920. So the Jones Act basically says that if you want to ship anything between two U.S. ports, Baltimore to Boston, Houston to Puerto Rico, Jacksonville to New York, Hawaii to L.A., Alaska to Seattle, if you want to ship anything between two American ports, the ship that transports the material between those ports has to be American built, American owned, American flagged, and American crewed, which means 75% of the crew need to be Americans, American citizens, 75%. Now, the reality is, as you'd expect, that there are not many ships like that in the world anymore. America has become, is very, very, very expensive and very bad shipbuilder. And therefore, there are almost no ships that are built in the US anymore. And indeed, today, there's only 72 ships that qualify under the Jones Act. Only 72 ships that can transport stuff from an American port to an American port. Any other ship that transported stuff would have to stop in a foreign port on the way. So if you're shipping from, I don't know, LA to Hawaii, you'd have to go to Mexico or to Canada first and only then go to Hawaii. Then it's okay. And you have to have transport goods in this other port. You can't just do it symbolically. The Jones Act is one of the most irrational laws out there. It's one Donald Trump is committed to saving. It's one Biden was committed to saving. Everybody loves the Jones Act. Nobody knows exactly why, because it's one of the dumbest laws that exists. It makes no sense. It's failed. It's responsible for the unbelievably heavy traffic on the I-95, because instead of shipping stuff from port to port on the East Coast, you have to truck it because there are not enough ships to ship it. It's one of the reasons cost of living in Hawaii and in Puerto Rico are much higher than they should be, because shipping stuff to Puerto Rico and Hawaii is very expensive because there are very few boats that can do it. Why does the Jones Act still exist? Because the Jones Act has a small group that lobbies very heavily for it, and almost nobody who lobbies against it. The trucking companies lobby for the Jones Act. But then, of course, the ships themselves lobby for it. The merchant marines, the people who are on the ships lobby for it. And then the conservative nationalists love it because they believe that with a Jones Act, we will become a shipbuilding country again. We're never going to become a shipbuilding country. So here's kind of an anecdote from the Jones Act, right? There's a 21-year-old Jones Act ship, Suez Max. It's a tanker, right? And it needed repair. It needed repair. So it was sent to Singapore to repair the ship. It cost $60 million to repair the ship. Now, if you bought a new tanker that had been built in China or built in South Korea or Japan, those are the three big shipbuilding countries in the world today, it would have cost $86 million to get it brand new. So you paid $60 to repair it, because if you bought a brand new from one of those countries, it wouldn't have been a Jones Act ship anymore. And of course, Jones Act ships make a lot of money because they have a little monopoly going on. They're the only ships that can transport goods between two U.S. ports. If the ship had been built in the United States, if you wanted to build a new ship like the Suez Max, another tanker, a U.S.-built tanker, exact same specs, it would cost in the United States to build it $500 million. You can build it in South Korea or Japan for $86 million, in the U.S., $500 million. We don't have a shipbuilding industry. We're never going to have one. And this is just nuts. It's just plain nuts. In the meantime, Japan has a thriving shipbuilding industry, and it builds not only civilian ships, it builds military ships. And indeed, Japan just signed a big contract with the Australian government. It's a $10 billion Australian dollars, 6.5 billion American dollars, to build warships for Australia. This is the biggest defense sale that Japan has ever signed. They used to have a ban on the exportation of military equipment. That ban was repealed in 2014, and this is the biggest deal since then. They're going to build 3 upgraded Mogami class multi-role frigates. Japan built some of the best frigates in the world. And Japan indeed has one of the best navies in the world. And they will also help the Australians build 8 more of these frigates. These are Japanese designed frigates in Australia. So Japan is one of the great shipbuilding countries out there. It is incredibly successful, and now it is starting to become a defense contractor, and sell ships overseas. It might make sense for the United States Navy to consider outsourcing building some of the submarines and ships that we're building in the United States to the Japanese and South Koreans, given how pathetically slow we are at building our own ships. I mean, the United States has just been a disaster when it comes to building ships, when it comes to actually, getting our Navy modernized. We are way behind the Chinese, and part of the reason is we're not utilizing in a smart way the capabilities of our allies like South Korea and Japan. This new Mogami frigates are much more modern, much better equipped, and have a much bigger range than the existing Australian fleet. And of course, all of this is important for the U.S. because this is part of, one would hope, an alliance that Australia and Japan will be part of that is geared to defend the Pacific against Chinese dominance. In particular, if China invades Taiwan, but even if China just gets aggressive in terms of its want of control over the Pacific. let's see. Yeah. So let's move to China a little bit. China, as we know, has, as I've talked about on this show many, many times, has real economic problems. And part of the belief within the Chinese government is that some of those problems stem from the fact that Chinese are saving too much. Saving too much. And they're not spending enough. They're not consuming enough. As a consequence, there's not a lot of consumption inside China. And therefore, the whole Chinese economy is geared towards exports, which brings in revenue in dollars, which then is used to save, and much of that saving flows back to the United States. And what the Chinese government would like to do is for the Chinese people to spend more and to borrow more, in order to drive domestic consumption and domestic services. They want to shift as much of their economy. They want to make it like America. See, we in America complain about we don't save enough, we consume too much, and our consumers are too much in debt. The Chinese complain because their consumers save too much. They're not enough in debt, and they're not going to consume enough. And this is the problem. Neither country has a free market to see what consumers would actually do in a free market. One of the reasons the Chinese save so much is because they are not secure in their employment. They are new to being middle class. They're new to having money. And they're afraid that the money will either be confiscated by the Chinese government. It's an authoritarian government after all. Or they're afraid that the government is going to, their jobs will not be there. They're afraid that the economy will plummet. They don't know what the central government is going to do. So the Chinese are worried about their own future. It is true, by the way, that China has no welfare state. It has very little in terms of retirement savings and stuff. A lot of people in China actually save for retirement. Talk about the rational thing to do. Whereas in the United States, one of the reasons people don't save is the government has basically told them, don't worry about retirement. We're going to take care of your health care through Medicare. We're going to take care of your income through Social Security. Don't save. China hasn't reached that level of depravity yet. So its people actually save. They're incentivized to do so. But it's also true that the Chinese feel like the economy is not going well. They feel like they're in a precarious situation, and they are wary of taking any risks as a consequence. So they hold on to their money and they save it. And many times, again, they save it by investing it in America. Right now, Chinese households have lost a lot of their wealth in housing. Housing prices plummeted. People had second and third homes that they had bought on spec, they'd put money into, and they're never going to see that money again. Those houses were never built. And they have loans. Mortgages on houses where there's now no demand. They can't sell them and they can't rent them out. And you're going to see, you're seeing more and more defaults on those loans. So the government would like to do a Keynesian thing, consumers drive the economy, go out and consume. The Chinese people are saying, no, we don't trust the economy. The economy is very fragile. We don't trust the government. We're going to hold on to our savings, and we're going to make sure that if there is a crisis, we can take care of ourselves. The Chinese workers are amazingly rational when it comes to this. And indeed, ultimately saving is what drives production. And luckily, some of those savings are flowing to America. And it's what's driven over the last 40 years. It's what's driven investment in the United States. Chinese and Japanese and other countries' savings. And, part of the evidence to the fact that the Chinese economy is doing badly and that there's huge amounts of debts in the system, even if the debts are not taken on by consumers. If you look at provinces, think of provinces as states. If you look at Chinese states, provinces in this case, if you look at their budgets, Chinese provinces are now spending, I'll put it this way, 1/3 of Chinese provinces are spending all of their revenue, all their tax money on debt repayments. They are so indebted. They took on so much debt, to a large extent to build all the real estate that sits empty out there, that basically all of the money they raise in taxes goes to debt servicing. That is not a healthy economy. That is not a healthy situation to be in. Now, it's going to be sad when America reaches a state where the federal government is spending, I don't know, a huge chunk of GDP on debt repayment, but that's actually what's going on right now. It's not even debt repayment, it's just the interest payments on the debt, right? The US is just refinancing the debt and growing it constantly. At some point, they'll have to pay it back. To pay it back, literally to pay it back, that's going to consume a big part of government revenues if it's ever going to be paid back. All right, so China continues to struggle economically, and they continue to look at, I'd say, not very good economic theories, ideas about how to get themselves out of the mess. Unfortunately, they look to the West and the Keynesian kind of, Keynesian economics that gets the West into trouble constantly. The Chinese are adopting that. And sadly, nobody out there in the world, except for Millet, actually advocates for any kind of free market economics, for the actual solution to these problems. All right. Let's see. We have some Super Chat questions, not a lot. Remember, we have goals. We have a target. So please consider supporting the show. You can do it with a sticker, with a Super Chat question, a Super Chat sticker. Either way supports the show. So please consider doing that. Let me just make this change. The show is 100% made possible from the support of you guys out there. Many of you support through the Super Chat or through stickers. I just saw Wes did a $50 sticker. Thank you, Wes. A few $50 stickers from people like Wes would be fantastic. Let's see. Who else did a sticker? Ryan did a sticker early on. All right, so we don't have a lot of people watching. I think it's because of the early hour. So my suspicion is that this is probably not an ideal time for shows, but that is a problem because it's going to be the best time for me while I'm here in Europe. But anyway, we'll see. Maybe I'll just have to stay up later and do the shows late at night over here in spite of that. Carl just did a sticker. Thank you, Carl. Really appreciate that. And thank you. If everybody who's on right now does a sticker, that'd be fantastic. A $10 sticker from everybody right now. Imagine that. We'd blow away all our targets and we'd be rocking and rolling. That would be phenomenal. But anything you can do, trade, value for value, is greatly appreciated. All right, a reminder of our sponsors. Hendershot Wealth sponsors the show. They have a product that I think can save you a lot of money for some of you on capital gains. If you live off of capital gains, you expect a big capital gains payout, you can both defer it and also you can defer the capital gains, and you could also reduce the capital gains bill significantly over time, make a lot more money. Deferring makes a big difference. You can find out more of this. There's a video of me interviewing Robert Hendershot on my channel, so go check that out. There's a playlist for sponsors. You can find that. You can find that up there as well. So check it out and. All right, let me just see. What am I looking at? That's not what I'm doing. All right. right. And I want to do that. All right, also, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. hendershotwealth.com/YBS. And why am I doing this? All right. Let's see. We've got, remember, Alex Epstein is one of our sponsors, the world expert, fossil fuels, energy, climate change, environmentalism more broadly, everything to do with what's going on in Washington right now with regard to deregulation of energy. Alex is crucial and important, and you'll learn a lot from him. You'll become a better communicator of these ideas. You'll learn a ton about fossil fuels and the history of energy and how it works and why solar and wind is as damaging as it is, and what the truth is about climate change. So check out alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. And finally, the Ayn Rand Institute wants to remind you there's an Ayn Rand Institute app. You can find it on your phone, on either Google Store or Apple Store. And it includes all of Leonard Peikoff's courses. Just that makes it unbelievable value. You'll have at your fingertips all of Leonard Peikoff's content available to you. So check it out. You can access it through aynrand.org, aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. All right, let's jump into, one more last reminder. Patreon, if you want to become a monthly supporter, which would be great. Some of you, for some reason, are being dropped out of PayPal. I have no control over this. There's some glitch in PayPal that's dropping a bunch of you. Please check that out and see if you've been affected. And I think the most stable platform and the easier one to use and the easier one to manipulate is Patreon. So those of you so inclined, move over to Patreon. But please, if you want to support the show on a regular basis, not have to think about it, not worry about super chats, go over to Patreon, put in your Yaron Brook Show, and become a monthly supporter. All right, Mary Aline, thank you for the sticker, and keep those stickers coming. And questions. We've got plenty of time for questions. James, I really don't think objectivism is that hard to understand. Our movement doesn't fully appreciate how mindless the vast majority of people are today. We think we switched our minds to on mode. Why can't everyone else? I mean, there's a sense in which that's true. Why can't everybody else? But they obviously, it's hard. Obviously, they don't. And I don't know why, and you don't know why, but the reality is they don't. And that's a reality we have to deal with. We have to find ways to try to get younger people to switch their minds on when they still have a chance, and to encounter these ideas and get exposed to these ideas and embrace these ideas when they can make a real difference in their lives. They can make a real difference at any age, but it's less likely to happen as you get older. So you want to try to get them switched on when they're young. But objectivism is not as easy to understand as you think it is. Particularly not when you get deeper into it. Particularly not if you know something about philosophy and the questions philosophy has. It's tricky for people, particularly if they're committed to another philosophy. But it's doable. We're all proof that it's doable. We just need to keep hammering away and try to convince more and more people. Mary Aline, ESA, education saving accounts with no strings attached. I love it. More children learn to think for themselves would be huge. Yeah, I mean, ESAs with no strings attached are the solution in the short run, at least, short to medium run. And again, just getting people out of government schools, getting kids out of government schools is a huge improvement, even if it involves continuing government support, financial support for education. I'd rather have the government's financial support for education than government running schools. Government running schools is 100 times worse than redistribution of wealth. 100 times more damaging. If I could get rid of government schools tomorrow, and yet government still funds education through education saving accounts, I would take it in a heartbeat. Just because government education is so damaging. And then we can try to convince people the redistribution of wealth is immoral and wrong. Ice pick. Have you been following Richard Hanania recently? He seems to think that there's not a lot of actual evidence against Epstein, and that it's mostly a modern moral panic. Thoughts? Yes, I've been watching the Hanania stuff, and I'm skeptical that he's right. I'm also skeptical about the pedophilia ring that was involved. I think it's somewhere in between. I think the reality is that Epstein was a creep, that he indeed did, solicit and in some cases coerce and rape young women, young girls. Now, he wasn't doing it with 5-year-olds, granted, but 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, I mean, that's still really, really bad. And so he was actively engaged. It's pretty well documented that they recruited girls for him to give him massages, and he escalated from there. And we're talking about dozens and dozens of girls. How often was violence involved? It's not clear. There's not a huge case regarding the violence. And then there's simply, as of now, there is no evidence of a blackmail ring. There's no evidence that he handed out these women to other people. Now, there is the accusation against Prince Andrew that one woman has made. She recently committed suicide. And there are a lot of settlements being done, but the settlements could just be done because nobody wants to go to court. We don't know the full extent of what happened there. Nobody's done the full review. I think it's a mistake to dismiss it all, but it's also kind of the moral panic that MAGA is going through, and the hysteria, and the conspiratorial nature of how they're presenting it all. I think that's wrong as well. So Epstein was a creep. What he did was horrible. What other people did with him, probably, certainly Maxwell, but also some of the people who were on the island with him and hang out with him, who probably also engaged in sex with minors, is horrible and despicable. There are, worse things in the world, and it's not as extensive as people claim it is, and it's not some conspiracy, and it's not a ring of passing around children, and it's bad, horrible, and there are worse things out there, sadly. And I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad he was arrested finally. I'm glad he was about to face justice. I'm glad Maxwell is in prison. She probably deserves to be in prison. But we don't know the full extent of what happened there. And I don't know that we'll ever know. We know it's bad, but how bad? And I agree that it's nowhere near the kind of hysteria that MAGA makes it out. But I also don't think it's something to just insignificant. But he died, and she's in jail. There's probably not a lot more that can be done and should be done. Hopper Campbell, even if Kant had never existed, was the Enlightenment enough to uproot Christianity and make it an absolute force? Probably not. It needed Ayn Rand. The Enlightenment needed Ayn Rand. But without Kant, the Enlightenment would have struggled, as it did in the 19th century, but still it would have been a lot more powerful entering the 20th century than with Kant around. And as a consequence, it's likely that right now the Enlightenment would be a much bigger force, a much more important force, and Ayn Rand would have had a much bigger impact on the culture because she would have been talking to a culture in which Enlightenment values were present. So Kant made a big difference in the Enlightenment's survival one way or another. It would have dissipated anyway, because it was weak. It would have been attacked by other philosophers. It was already attacked by Rousseau from within. It would have been attacked by others. But it still would have been stronger. Kant was such a huge influence that he really dealt it a blow that made it so that by the time Ayn Rand shows up, the culture is just not ready for her because it's been, the Enlightenment has been diluted so much. Not your average algorithm. As you mature, you realize nothing is ever a loss. It's either redirection or realization. Well, I don't know. I mean, your child dies is not a loss. Again, I don't like these kind of, I don't know what you call it, aphorisms, one sentence kind of deep truths. No, some things are losses. As you mature, what you realize is, yeah, you lose stuff. Okay, you move on. But if a child of yours dies, it's not a redirection or realization. It's a loss. If you lose all your money in the stock market, you've lost. So, Andrew, a friend who's a corporate defense attorney supports Mandami. How can one pit one's values against each other to that extent? Can you conceive of a wealthy business defender supporting the hatred of wealth and business? Yeah, I mean, you see that all the time. They do all the time, all the time. I mean, think of all the businessmen who support the Democratic Party, or all the businessmen who probably give Elizabeth Warren money for her campaign, or who gave Obama, or who gave Kamala, and who hated, people who hated values. Yeah, I mean, Mamdanis of the world could not exist without the sanction of the victim. And not just the sanction of the victim, without the full support of the victim. The victim feels guilty. They all feel guilty. They feel guilty for their success. I mean, this guy's a corporate defense attorney. He's defending corporations. How evil does it get? I mean, that's what he thinks in his own mind. He's sold out to the machine. He is the man. And his one act of rebellion against himself is voting for Mamdani. And it's completely, utterly out of a sense of guilt for working for the man, for being the man. I mean, again, in our culture, being a corporate defense attorney, is there a lower profession than that? I mean, you're almost as bad as Epstein. And says, can we expect them to help end public schools? They have. I mean, the first voucher systems were in inner cities, and they were passed by Democrats. Now, they haven't been willing to generalize that to middle class and further, but when it comes to, in some places, they have realized that this is a massive help to the poor, and they've been willing to support it. I fear, though, that Republican support for school choice will fade as the national conservatives and their ilk dominate the Republican Party. It wasn't a long time ago. I mean, you look at the history of it. You're making stuff up, and there's a big tendency among yes, in my backyard kind of Democrats around left of center to be very supportive of school choice. My fear is that the Republicans are going to move away from it, and then there's going to be nobody. So I hope that the more rational, the more economically minded Democrats embrace school choice as something that they actually do support. I mean, charter schools, for example, are huge in New York. And that, to a large extent, was done under Democrats, not just under Bloomberg was a Democrat, Democratic mayor of New York. And a lot of the charter school initiatives were done under that. But again, other parts of the country, in the Midwest, other places, in Democratic cities, they have passed charters. Not enough, not wide enough. It's not embraced far enough. The teachers' unions still hold the Democratic Party in their clutches. And they're afraid, the teachers' union is afraid of any kind of school choice because they're afraid of being destroyed, which is the result of it. But I think, but the reality is, the reality is that yes, they will disappear. We better hope, put it this way, whether it's possible or not is an open question. We better hope the Democrats embrace it, because I don't think Republicans will embrace it for very long. Are people afraid to confront altruism, says James, in themselves, because they think abandoning altruism requires them to become a more harsh and callous person in regard to the evaluation of others? I mean, yeah, that's part of it, but it's also they're afraid of abandoning altruism because that's what goodness means, and they don't want to be not good. They don't want to be bad. They're afraid of abandoning altruism because they realize that, they can't get into heaven if they abandon altruism. Whether heaven is in an afterlife or heaven is just, be considered a good person in our society, they can't have any of that. They also think that the alternative to altruism is either hedonism, nihilism, or just being an asshole. So they don't know what the alternative is, but it's not just that. Like when you present them, here's a set of values and virtues that don't require you to be callous towards others, they're not willing to accept it. And they're not willing to accept it because they bought into a moral code that the entire world is bought into, and for them to reject it would be a massive act of rebellion, which very few people have the courage to engage in. Liam, have you ever been to Katz's Deli in New York City? Is it worth going to? Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's good. If you like pastrami sandwiches or corned beef sandwiches, they're really good. Yeah. Michael, the Trump administration sees large segments of its own population as the enemy within that must be crushed in order to defend the supposed true America. Yes, but so do some people on my chat. So do many people. We become tribal, and the Trump administration believes that the only way for America to succeed is to crush the other tribe. That's the reality. It's become a war, and it's not about freedom, it's not about liberty, it's about my side winning and my side controlling and my side dictating. Thank you, Michael. Let me see here. I saw somebody do something that didn't go through. Oh, Anomalous just gifted a membership, so thank you, Anomalous, for doing that. Just a reminder, we got a few more people joined, that you too, that you should consider supporting the show, doing a sticker, asking a question. I've only got 3 questions left, so you've still got time to ask a question. But use the Super Chat, engage with the Super Chat, ask a question, and become part of us. Esoteric Dichotomy. Hello, Yaron. Is it irrational for a shopkeeper to ban burkas from their store? Not hijab, just the full face covering types. Why not? No, I don't think it is irrational. I mean, it's illegal these days. I don't think you can do it, but in a rational society it would be absolutely appropriate. The burqa represents, the exact opposite values of what you stand for. And you don't want to support people who hold values that you are completely, thoroughly, systematically opposed to. You're sanctioning their evil. So so I think it's completely rational to say, if you wear swastika, you can't come into my store. I won't support Nazis. If you come in with a Che Guevara T-shirt, I'm not serving you. Out you go. I don't serve communists. And if you wear hijab or a burqa, then I'm not serving you because you represent an Islamist religion that I reject and that is trying to overthrow Western civilization, and there's a rejection of Western civilization, which is necessary for me to thrive. So absolutely, you should be able to discriminate against all those people. And I think the kind of discrimination, a discrimination on the basis of ideas, is the right kind of discrimination. That's the kind of discrimination that you should embrace and you should go for. and is completely rational. Blaze Guitar Lessons. Is raising taxes a viable way to fix the U.S. debt? Well, it's not a good way to fix U.S. debt. It's not a sustainable way to fix the U.S. debt because raising taxes will slow economic growth. But at some point, it might be the only option in order to pay back the debt. So the longer we wait, the more you're going to have to cut spending and potentially also raise taxes at the same time. And that's probably where we're heading. We're heading to a time where we cut spending and we raise taxes in order to try to pay off the debt. It's not ideal because, again, raising taxes slows economic growth. But I don't see an option. Paying back the debt is necessary. And kicking the debt down the road and pretending that you're not raising taxes is just pretending. It's just fantasy. It's evasion. One way or the other, debt is taxes. It's economically destructive, but it's also future taxation. Raj Dawan, thank you for the sticker. Robert, thank you for the sticker. Appreciate you guys. The Prophet, this is the last question. The last chance to support the show is to jump in now with a question or a sticker. Go for it, people. The Prophet says, thanks for your answer about tax yesterday. Here is the attitude that I got. Here is the attitude that I got from it. This is the world we currently live in. If they decide to tax me 50%, I will just produce twice as much. No, I mean, you might not be able to produce twice as much, right? But it is the world in which we live in, and you wanna live the best life that you can. Producing twice as much might not be your best option. Your best option might be to accept the fact that they take 50% and do the best that you can with what you've got left. The point I was trying to make yesterday was that there is no universal answer to this. You have to decide how much effort to put into avoiding taxes, how much you're willing to take a hit today in order to save taxes tomorrow, how much are you willing to work harder in order to increase your production because of the tax rate. All of these questions are questions you have to decide for yourself. I moved to Puerto Rico. I literally moved to Puerto Rico out of nowhere in order to dramatically reduce my taxes. I mean, dramatically reduce my taxes. So, and moving to Puerto Rico was not easy. It's not an easy place to live. So, for me, it was worth it. At the point in life that I was at, my ability to work from anywhere and the amount of taxes I was paying and the kind of productive activity I engage in, that was worth it for me to move to Puerto Rico. It might not be worth it for a lot of other people. They might have reasons to stay where they are and not move to Puerto Rico, even though it'll save them a lot of taxes. So, you have to weigh all the different issues that are before you. And then what you need to embrace is the idea, and this is the key. How do I live the best life I can, now and in the future? And given the tax code, right? Given this is the tax code. How do I move to Puerto Rico? Or if you live in the UK, do I go to Monte Carlo? Do I move to Malta or Cyprus, to reduce my taxes? Or do I just suck it up and accept the fact that if I'm going to live in the UK, I'm going to pay these taxes, and I'm going to figure out how to live the best life that I can given those circumstances? Or do I live in a one-bedroom little apartment now, pay as little taxes now so that I can one day have more? I mean, all these are you have to consider and you have to figure out. The standard is your life, your values, your time value, how you look at time. Values today versus values in the future. That was my point. So no, I absolutely not think that you should produce twice as much because the tax rate is 50%. That's not my approach at all. Frank. De Bono offered a solution to democracy's weakness by giving all elected politicians the same voting capital to bid on legislations, thereby giving individuals and minorities active power. Any thoughts? The same voting capital. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So, capital at birth, capital is this literally capital that you use to vote. Look, I mean, all of these, I don't believe in gimmicks. I think the fragility of democracies doesn't come from lack of voting capital. I think the fragility of democracies comes from the democratic process. The very fact that we've allowed majorities to dictate our lives. The solution to democracy's fragility or weakness is to embrace constitutional republicanism, to embrace a constitution that limits the ability of the majority to infringe on the rights of the minority. That is, to eliminate the ability of the majorities to infringe on the rights of the majorities. To weaken, to eliminate government's ability to infringe on rights. That's the solution. And then voting becomes less important. And what matters is just the enforcement of protection of individual rights. And that's it. And then there's no redistribution, there's no regulations, there's no controls, or the regulations that exist only are regulations, very, very few, regulations absolutely necessary for the protection of rights, and that's it. And then democracies, you solve the problem of democracies. What is the problem of democracy? The problem of democracy is that the majority by vote can infringe on the rights of the minorities. And again, the smallest minority is the individual, so they infringe on the rights of the individual. So get rid of their ability to do that. And you get rid of their ability to do that through a rights-protecting constitution. Thank you, Frank. Oh, thank you, Adri. Adri just came in with a $50 sticker. Thank you, Adri. Really, really appreciate that. That's great. Jonathan, should there be a legal age for drinking and drugs? I think so. I think so. There are just some substances that are incredibly damaging and that, kids are not in a position to handle and to be able to make an assessment about. Parents should be able to let their kids drink or give their kids drugs, but children should not be in a position to make that choice for themselves. I think consuming, that and maybe porn and there are a few other things that children should not be. I mean, they can't sign documents. They can't sign, so they can't understand the consequences of their actions in a way that you could say, okay, they have a reasoned capacity. They can apply their reason to a decision about whether to drink or to take drugs or not. They don't have that capacity, and until they have it, there should be a legal age restriction. And that age restriction a court should be able to override it. That is, a court should be able to say, no, this 16-year-old is mature enough to make decisions for themselves. They're emancipated, and that includes they can drink and they can take drugs. Esoteric dichotomy. What sort of tax do you think would best address the debt? Would it have to be a regular increase or a specific dedicated tax just for debt payment? Well, I mean, if we were talking about paying back the debt, I think there are a number of things that you would do. You would start with selling off government assets. I would sell all government land, all government property, all government facilities other than those used by the military. You would take that money and use it for debt repayment. Second, you would cut as much spending as you possibly can. And then third, you would revise the tax system. You wouldn't raise a special tax to pay back the debt. What you would do is you would run surpluses. So you would cut spending, the more the better, except for what is necessary for protection of individual rights. And then you would rationalize the tax system, whether it's a flat income tax or whether it's a abolish the constitutional amendment that made income tax possible and embrace a consumption tax. You want to create a tax system that promotes production, that promotes economic growth. So you want it simple, easy, on a postcard, no thought having to be involved, no resources being allocated for it. So, you know, you could, you don't think of a special tax to pay off the debt. That is illegitimate in my view. The government needs to run a surplus and pay off the debt through the surplus. And they do that by rationalizing, by having a economically more rational tax system than exists today. The tax system today is, and it's only getting worse, and Trump only made it worse. It's corrupt, it's time consuming, it's resource consuming, it's energy and mind consuming. Make it simple, straightforward, flat, and get out of the way. So that's the kind of tax system and spend system you need. You need to cut spending dramatically and simplify taxes dramatically. Those are the two things that need to be done. All right, guys. Good to see you. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the show. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what time. I'll have to make a decision tomorrow about time. I think it'll be later, but we will see. All right. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Oh, thank you to all the super chatters, all the super chatters and the stickers. You guys were great. Really, really appreciate the support. Thank you. Bye.